I never imagined I'd look at my own daughter and feel such disbelief. It all started with a call late at night. My phone buzzed, and her name flashed on the screen. I answered, thinking she was in trouble or needed me like always. "Mom, I need your help," she said, her voice trembling, though I sensed something more beneath it. "What is it, sweetheart?" I asked, concerned. "I made a mistake. Big one, and I need money. I don't know where else to turn." Something in her tone set off alarms. I hesitated, but I had taught her to trust me. I told her I would listen. "I borrowed some money, and it's gone. I need 127, Mom," she admitted, almost whispering. I froze. $127. That's not a small sum. That's not just a mistake someone makes casually. My stomach sank, and I felt my heart tighten. Where did you get that kind of money?" I asked, trying to keep calm. I thought I could manage. I thought it would be fine. "I can pay you back, I promise," she said, voice cracking. I felt anger bubbling, sharp and fierce. But I tried to mask it. My mind raced. I had worked my entire life, sacrificed so much to build a safety net, and now my own daughter had taken a gamble with it. "I need you to be honest with me. Did you take it from my accounts?" I asked carefully, each word measured. There was a pause. I could hear her breathing, hesitant, almost fearful. "Yes, I didn't know what else to do," she admitted finally. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I just panicked." I felt the floor beneath me shift. Hurt, disbelief, anger, they all collided. $127,000. Emma, do you even understand what that means? What that is to me? To our family? My voice shook, though I fought to stay composed. I messed up, Mom. I didn't know who else to ask," she whispered. "You didn't just mess up. You betrayed my trust, my money, everything I worked for," I said, the words cutting through the quiet night. I ended the call and sat in the living room, numb. I thought of every sacrifice, every sleepless night I had endured to provide a life for her, for us. And now, it had been undermined. The next morning, I had to face reality. I logged into my accounts. The numbers were gone. My heart sank as I traced the transactions. It was all there, the withdrawals, the transfers. She had methodically siphoned money, hoping I wouldn't notice until it was too late. I confronted her again in person. Her eyes were red, shame and fear battling in them. "Emma, we need to talk," I said calmly, though my pulse raced. "I'm sorry," she said before I could even begin. "I swear I'll make it right. You stole $127,000 from me. How do you plan to make that right? Do you even realize what you've done?" I asked, keeping my voice steady despite the anger boiling inside me. I don't know. I panicked. I thought I could fix it before you noticed," she admitted, tears streaming down her face. I took a deep breath, fighting the urge to yell, to cry, to collapse in despair. "You took what was mine, what was meant to secure our future. But I'm not going to let this destroy us. You will pay it back, every cent, and you will understand the consequences of your choices." Her sobs shook her body. "I'll do anything, Mom. I swear." I spent the next weeks securing my finances. I closed accounts, moved money, and created protections she couldn't bypass. I hired a financial advisor to help me take back control. Every action was meticulous. Every precaution was necessary. I couldn't allow trust to blind me again. Meanwhile, Emma stayed with me, attempting to work odd jobs, selling her belongings, anything to repay the money she had taken. Each time I watched her struggle, my heart wrenched. But I didn't let sympathy cloud the lessons she needed to learn. One evening, as she sat across from me, exhausted and defeated, I spoke quietly. "Do you understand why this happened? Why you were able to do this?" I was desperate. "I didn't think. I thought you would never find out. I thought I could fix it on my own," she whispered. "You violated trust, Emma. But more importantly, you put yourself in danger. Money taken recklessly doesn't just disappear. People notice. And you could have ruined your entire life," I said, keeping my tone steady. Tears welled in her eyes. "I know, Mom. I'm so sorry. You must understand," I continued, "that regaining my trust won't be easy. You have to prove it, not just with words but with actions. Every choice you make from now on matters. You need to rebuild yourself, and we will rebuild together, but on my terms." She nodded, silent. It was the beginning of accountability. Weeks turned into months. I watched her slowly regain dignity through hard work and determination. I observed her transformation with a mix of pride and lingering sorrow. She wasn't the daughter who had taken the money. She was someone learning the weight of her actions. When the last cent of the stolen money was repaid, I felt a cautious relief. The financial damage was undone, but the emotional scar remained. I realized then that this betrayal, though painful, had changed both of us. We learned boundaries, trust, and responsibility in ways words alone could never teach. And though forgiveness didn't erase the pain, it opened a door. A door for us to rebuild, stronger and wiser. The days after she repaid the last installment weren't easy. Even though the money was back in my accounts, the shadow of betrayal lingered. Every time I saw her, I remembered the fear, the panic, and the sheer disbelief I had felt when I realized she had taken that money. Trust, once broken, does not mend overnight. I don't want this to happen again, I said one evening, as we sat in the kitchen. The room smelled faintly of the dinner she had attempted to cook herself. She looked at me, exhausted but attentive. I know, Mom, she said quietly. I won't ever do anything like that again. I've really learned. I studied her carefully. She looked smaller somehow, not in body, but in spirit. The arrogance and recklessness that had allowed her to steal from me were gone, replaced by humility and fear of losing me entirely. You need to understand something, I said. This isn't just about money. You can make a mistake with money and fix it, but betrayal damages hearts, relationships, and lives. And the worst part is, you never truly know the cost until it's too late. Her lips trembled. I know, Mom, I feel it every day. I feel it in every look, every word. I almost destroyed us, and I can't take that back. But I want to make things right any way I can. I nodded slowly. Her remorse seemed genuine, but I had learned not to trust words alone. Actions mattered, and so I gave her tasks, responsibilities, things that required discipline, honesty, and accountability. Every day, she reported her progress, her failures, and her successes. Every night, I evaluated. Sometimes I caught her glancing at me nervously, as if expecting a sharp word, a harsh punishment, a wall of anger. But I kept my composure. I wanted her to feel the weight of her choices without crushing her entirely. I wanted her to rebuild herself, not crumble under guilt. Weeks passed. Her work ethic grew. She managed a small project I gave her, tracking household expenses meticulously. She was careful, precise, accountable. I could see the change in her demeanor. The panic-driven impulsiveness had been replaced with careful thought and measured decisions. One night, she came to me with a folder. Mom, I've been working on something. I want to show you. I looked at her, wary. What is it? It's a plan, she said, her voice firm but tentative. I want to rebuild my credit. I want to learn to manage money responsibly. I want to prove I can be trustworthy, not just with you but in the world. Please, just look. I took the folder, flipping through the neatly organized pages. Budgets, plans, projected expenses, repayment schedules for personal debts, even a small savings plan. She had thought through every detail. I see you've been serious about this, I said quietly. This is good. Very good. Her eyes welled up. I mean it, Mom. I don't want to ever be that person again. I don't want to hurt anyone like I hurt you. I nodded slowly, feeling a mix of relief and lingering weariness. Actions speak louder than words. Keep this up, and maybe one day trust will come back fully. But it will take time. You need to understand that. She nodded eagerly. I will, I swear. Months turned into a year. The small victories added up. She got a part-time job, contributed to the household, and even started a small side business she managed independently. I watched from a distance, letting her make decisions, allowing her to experience consequences, good and bad. One day, as she handed me her monthly report, she said quietly, Mom, I think I finally understand. It wasn't just the money. It was everything it represented. Security, trust, love, all of it. I almost destroyed that. I studied her carefully. There was no guile, no hiding, only a raw, honest acknowledgement. You're learning, I said softly. And that's what matters. Keep going. Keep proving it, to yourself and to me. Her smile was small but genuine. "I will, Mom. Thank you for not giving up on me." I nodded. It had been hard, almost unbearably so, but giving up wasn't an option. She was my daughter, and despite the pain, I believe in the possibility of redemption. Then came the day she faced a real test. She received a tempting offer, a way to make quick money through something shady. I watched her hesitate, her face a mixture of longing and fear. "Think carefully, Emma," I said calmly. "You already know what happens when you take shortcuts. You're not that person anymore. Don't let old habits define you." She hesitated, then shook her head firmly. "No, Mom. I've learned. I won't make that mistake again." I felt a surge of pride. It wasn't over. There would always be tests, always temptations, always moments where past impulses could surface. But in that moment, she chose integrity over desperation, and slowly, painstakingly, trust began to rebuild between us. Not completely, not instantly, but in small increments, in quiet gestures, in moments of honesty and accountability. I realized then that control wasn't just about money or power. It was about boundaries, lessons, and guiding someone toward growth. It was about forgiveness without forgetting and discipline tempered with love. Emma had taken a path that could have destroyed her life. She had almost destroyed mine. But together, we were navigating the aftermath, learning to coexist with honesty, respect, and a fragile but real trust. I knew the road ahead would not be smooth. Mistakes could still happen, temptations could arise, and fear could creep in. But now, for the first time since that night when I discovered the theft, I felt a cautious optimism. We had survived the worst, and maybe, just maybe, we could find a way to truly heal. Months passed and life settled into a new rhythm. Emma's determination became evident in everything she did. She had started working longer hours at her job, carefully saving each paycheck. She took extra night classes in finance and accounting, determined to understand the mistakes she had made. I watched her quietly, letting her earn her way back into my trust, silently observing the small ways she tried to repair what had been broken. One evening, she came home looking exhausted, her hair messy from hours of work, and collapsed into a chair. "Mom, I'm doing everything I can, but it's so much harder than I thought. I keep thinking about the money I took, and I can't stop beating myself up." I sat beside her, feeling the weight of her guilt. "Emma, it's painful, I know. But guilt isn't enough. Action is what matters. You're taking action every day, and that's what will rebuild your life." She nodded, her eyes red and tired. I don't want to be that person anymore. I can't go back." "You won't," I said softly. "But you have to keep proving it. Not to me, not even to yourself. You have to do it for the life you want to have. Integrity matters more than anything else. Everything else can be rebuilt, but integrity can't." She looked down, silent, then whispered, "I understand." Weeks later, we faced our first real external test. A distant relative, who had heard whispers about what happened, approached Emma with a seemingly innocent investment opportunity. "It's a chance to double your money fast," he said. "No risk, just trust me." I watched as she hesitated, her brow furrowed, her hands fidgeting. I could see the old Emma, the impulsive, desperate girl who might have jumped at the chance. "Think carefully, Emma," I said. "This is exactly the kind of choice that can ruin everything you've worked for. You've been down this path before. Don't go there again." She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and finally shook her head. "No, Mom. I can't, I won't. I've learned the hard way. Quick money is never worth losing everything again." I felt my chest swell with relief and pride. She was starting to internalize the lessons, not just follow instructions. It was a fragile victory, but a real one. Life continued with small victories. She completed her classes, improved her financial literacy, and even began helping friends manage their money responsibly. She was no longer just repaying the debt. She was becoming someone trustworthy, responsible, and thoughtful. Yet, even as we progressed, the shadow of the $127,000 theft still lingered between us. Words of forgiveness had been exchanged, but emotions ran deeper. Some nights, I caught myself lying awake, remembering the panic, the disbelief, the betrayal. It was a wound that took longer to heal than any money could fix. One quiet evening, Emma approached me with a notebook. She handed it over, hesitant but determined. Mom, I've been writing everything down. Every mistake, every temptation, every lesson. I want you to see how seriously I'm taking this. I flipped through the pages. There were detailed accounts of her spending, reflections on her mistakes, strategies for handling temptation, and plans for the future. She had mapped out her path from recklessness to responsibility with clarity and honesty. I see you've put a lot of thought into this, I said. It's impressive, and it shows growth, real growth. But remember, growth isn't finished. It's ongoing and will always be tests. I know, she said quietly. And I'm ready for them. The next major test came unexpectedly. A sudden financial emergency hit our family, a medical expense that wasn't covered, far beyond what we could comfortably pay. I felt the old panic rise, knowing how easily people could be tempted when desperate. Emma stepped forward, offering her savings and work income. I want to help, she said firmly. I want to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. I looked at her, amazed. The girl who had taken 127,000 from me was now standing before me, offering every resource she had, thinking carefully and responsibly. My heart ached, but it was a different kind of ache, a bittersweet pride. Together, we navigated the emergency, balancing our resources, making sacrifices, and supporting each other. That experience solidified her growth in ways no lectures or punishments could. She learned firsthand what responsibility truly meant. And I learned that people could change, even after immense betrayal. Months turned into a year, and slowly, the tension between us began to dissolve. Trust, though still fragile, started to rebuild. We shared small moments, coffee in the morning, quiet conversations at night, and laughter over shared memories. Each gesture reinforced that while the past could not be erased, the future could be shaped. One night, Emma sat across from me, holding a small envelope. Mom, I want you to have this, she said. I took it, confused. Inside was a check, not the exact amount she had taken, but symbolic, a gesture of full accountability and restitution beyond the financial. I want you to know I understand, she said, tears brimming in her eyes. I understand what I took, what I risked, and what I've learned. I don't expect everything to be okay instantly, but I want you to know I am committed to being better. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of months of tension, heartbreak, and hard work lift slightly. I see, Emma, and I believe you. But remember, belief is just the beginning. Actions will continue to speak louder than words. She nodded, her hands trembling slightly. I know. And I will keep showing it. Every day. I realized something profound. Control wasn't about strict rules or fear, it was about boundaries, lessons, accountability, and the chance to see someone truly grow. Emma had taken a path that could have destroyed her life, but she had chosen to learn, to rebuild, to earn back trust. And in doing so, we had both grown stronger. I understood then that even after betrayal, redemption was possible. And even after mistakes that seemed irreparable, love could endure if tempered with lessons, boundaries, and the courage to change. It was a Saturday morning when the call came. I was reviewing bills when the phone rang, and a voice on the other end delivered news that made my heart stop. Mom, there's been a problem with your investments. One of the accounts has been compromised. You're facing a potential loss of over 200,000, the banker said calmly, but I could hear the gravity in his voice. I sat frozen. My mind immediately went to Emma. I had secured everything meticulously, but somehow some portion of our finances had been exposed. I'll be right there, I said, hanging up, my chest tight with anxiety. I looked at Emma, who had been sitting quietly in the living room. What is it? She asked, noticing the tension in my face. Something serious with our finances, I said carefully. We need to handle this together. Her eyes widened, but I noticed a flicker of resolve, not panic. This was the first time she faced a real high-stakes challenge since repaying the 127,000 she had taken. We drove to the bank, both tense but determined. As we met with the financial advisor, the situation became clear. Someone had attempted to transfer a large sum from an account linked to the estate, exploiting a loophole we had missed in our earlier security overhaul. If we hadn't caught it in time, The loss would have been catastrophic. This is serious, the advisor said. We need immediate action. If you delay, it could escalate quickly. Emma took a deep breath. I'll help, she said firmly. Tell me what to do. I looked at her amazed. The girl who had once stolen 127,000 from me was now standing beside me, ready to fight for our family's security. I gave her tasks, precise instructions, monitor transfers, verify account activities, contact institutions, and track every irregularity. She followed each step meticulously, double-checking every detail, never rushing, never panicking. Hours passed like minutes. I watched her work tirelessly, and slowly, relief began to replace my anxiety. She caught a suspicious transaction just in time, stopping a transfer that could drain nearly half of our emergency funds. You did it, I said quietly, a mixture of pride and disbelief in my voice. Emma looked exhausted, but she smiled faintly. We did it, Mom. Together. That night, as we sat quietly, the weight of the day pressing on us, she reached for my hand. Mom, I want you to know, I'm never going to let you down like that again. Not ever. I've learned the hard way what losing control feels like. I felt tears well in my eyes. Emma, you've come so far. I can see it. Today you proved it to me and yourself. You're not the same girl who took the money. You've grown. You've faced fear, responsibility, and accountability, and you chose integrity. She leaned her head against my shoulder, exhausted but at peace. I'm so sorry for everything I did before, Mom. I can't change the past, but I can fight for the future. I held her tight. Realized forgiveness wasn't about erasing the past. It was about seeing growth, acknowledging effort, and accepting that people could change if given the chance and willing to take responsibility. The following months were smoother. Emma continued to rebuild her life, making financial decisions wisely, and even offering guidance to others in need. Our relationship, once fractured, was now stronger, not because the betrayal had disappeared, but because it had forced honesty, communication, and true accountability. One day she came to me with a folder, thicker than any she had presented before. Mom, this is my plan for the next 5 years. I want to prove to you that I can sustain this growth, that I can be reliable, responsible, and trustworthy. I opened it, scanning the detailed budgets, goals, and plans. She had analyzed every potential risk, accounted for emergencies, and even included strategies for long-term security. It was impressive, not just the financial planning, but the maturity behind it. You've learned more than I ever imagined, I said softly. And you're proving it every day. But remember, trust isn't given, it's earned continuously. Keep this up, and you'll never have to worry about it again. I will, Mom, she said, tears glistening in her eyes. I want you to know I'm committed. I'm not the same person I was, and I never will be again. Years passed. Emma built a life of her own, grounded in responsibility and accountability. She became someone who could be trusted, who thought through consequences before acting, who valued integrity above shortcuts. And through it all, our bond strengthened, no longer fragile but resilient, tempered by fire, tested by betrayal, and rebuilt with love, patience, and determination. One evening, as we sat together looking through old photo albums, I realized that the worst experience of my life, the theft, the panic, the betrayal, had also become one of the most transformative. It had tested us, shaped us, and ultimately brought us closer. Emma looked at me, smiling softly. Mom, thank you for not giving up on me. I held her hand and smiled back. And thank you for not giving up on yourself. That's the hardest part of all, isn't it? Yes, she said quietly. But I had to. I had to face everything, make it right, and earn back your trust. And I will never stop. I realized then that control, responsibility, and trust were not things that could be taken or given lightly. They were built, maintained, and nurtured. And through fire and struggle, we had rebuilt them. Not just in our finances, but in our hearts. We had survived betrayal, reclaimed control, and forged a bond stronger than ever before. And I knew, as I looked at her, that the future would hold challenges, but we were ready. Together we could face anything. Over the next few years, Emma continued to grow into a responsible, capable young woman. Every decision she made was measured, thoughtful, and rooted in the lessons she had learned from her betrayal. She was no longer reckless or impulsive. The girl who had once taken 127,000 from me had transformed into someone I could not only trust but also admire. She moved into a small apartment nearby, but still came over often. We shared meals, talked about our days, and laughed at things that once seemed trivial. The house, which had felt heavy with fear and suspicion, now felt lighter. Slowly, the shadows of the past receded. One evening, she sat at the kitchen table with a stack of papers, looking serious but calm. "Mom, I've been thinking," she said quietly. "I want to start a small business, helping people manage their finances so they don't make the mistakes I did. I want to help people avoid the pain I caused myself and us." I studied her for a long moment, seeing the sincerity in her eyes. "Emma, that's a big responsibility. But if anyone is capable of handling it with integrity, it's you. You've learned the hardest lessons already." Her smile was small but confident. "I want to do it right this time, Mom. No shortcuts, no lies. Just honesty, guidance, and hard work." I felt a swell of pride. Her vision was not just about money. It was about helping others avoid the kind of mistakes that had once nearly destroyed her life. It was a sign that she had internalized the lessons of accountability, responsibility, and empathy. The first year of her business was not easy. There were mistakes, setbacks, and moments of doubt. But Emma faced them all with determination, never running from responsibility. She learned from errors rather than hiding them, and slowly, her reputation grew. Clients trusted her, colleagues respected her, and I watched with quiet pride as she built a life rooted in integrity. One afternoon, she came home with tears in her eyes, but this time they were tears of joy. "Mom, we did it. Our first big client just signed a contract. They trust me, and I didn't let them down. I didn't take the easy way out, and it feels amazing." I pulled her into a hug. "Emma, look at what you've accomplished. Look at how far you've come. I'm so proud of you." She laughed softly, wiping her eyes. "I couldn't have done it without your guidance, Mom. Without your patience, your insistence on responsibility, I might still be the person who took that money." I held her at arm's length, looking into her eyes. "And maybe someday, you'll use what you learned to guide others, just like I guided you. That's the true power of growth. Not just survival, but transformation." Over time, our bond deepened beyond the cautious, tested trust that had defined our early years after the theft. We became partners in life in ways I had never imagined, supporting each other, sharing triumphs and setbacks, and leaning on one another when challenges arose. One night, sitting together on the porch, she reached for my hand. "Mom, I want you to know that I've forgiven myself, finally. It took a long time, but I've learned the value of honesty, hard work, and trust. And I want to live by those values every day." I squeezed her hand gently. "And I want you to know I've forgiven you too. Not for the sake of forgetting what happened, but because I've seen the person you've become. You've earned back every ounce of trust you lost and more." She smiled softly, leaning against me. "I couldn't have done it without you." "No," I said quietly. "You did it yourself. I only guided you. You made the choice to change. That's the part that matters most." Years later, when I looked back on the dark time when I discovered the theft, I no longer saw only betrayal and loss. I saw the beginning of a transformation, not just for Emma, but for both of us. We had been tested, pushed to the limits of trust and patience, and had come out stronger, wiser, and more connected than ever before. The pain of the past remained, a reminder of what could have been lost, but it no longer held power over us. Instead, it became a foundation for empathy, guidance, and a deeper understanding of responsibility. Emma had faced the consequences of her actions, learned from them, and emerged as a capable, trustworthy, and compassionate woman. And I realized that control, trust, and love were not static, they were earned, maintained, and nurtured every day. Betrayal could shake the foundations of a relationship, but it could also forge resilience, growth, and a bond stronger than before. Looking at her, grown and accomplished, I felt a quiet satisfaction. The girl who had almost destroyed everything, heaven who could hold everything together. And I knew, without a doubt, that the future, while unpredictable, would be filled with trust, respect, and love that could withstand anything. Emma turned to me with a grin, holding a cup of tea. Mom, do you remember the day I asked for 127 illusion? I smiled faintly, shaking my head. How could I forget? Well, she said, her eyes twinkling, I guess we survived it, didn't we? Yes, I said softly, we survived it. And we became stronger because of it. We sat in silence, watching the sunset at quiet peace settling between us. The past had tested us, but it had also taught us the greatest lessons of all. Resilience, responsibility, accountability, and the enduring strength of love. And in that moment, I knew we were truly free. Free from fear, free from betrayal, and free to move forward together, stronger than ever before. Even as Emma grew more responsible, the ripple effects of her past actions occasionally resurfaced. Some relatives and friends, who had heard whispers of the 127,000 theft, were skeptical of her transformation. They questioned her motives, doubted her honesty, and in some cases, treated her with suspicion. One afternoon, my brother visited, his brows furrowed. I still don't understand how you could let this happen, he said, glancing at Emma. She stole from you, and now you're just letting it go. Emma looked down, quiet but composed. I understand your doubts, she said softly. I don't expect anyone to forgive me instantly, but I've worked every day to make it right. I've learned from my mistakes, and I continue to show that I am trustworthy. I felt a surge of protectiveness. She's earned her redemption, and she's proven it. You may not see it yet, but she's changed. Actions matter more than words. My brother shook his head, still unconvinced, but I could see the beginnings of respect in his eyes as he noticed her calm, sincere demeanor. Emma had begun to win people over not by arguing, but by quietly proving herself through consistent integrity. Emma's business continued to grow, and with it came challenges. She faced difficult clients, skeptical investors, and high-stress situations that would have overwhelmed her old self. Yet each time she handled them thoughtfully, always taking responsibility for mistakes, and never hiding behind excuses. One day, a major client threatened to pull out over a minor error she had made. Panic bubbled in the back of her mind, a whisper of the old Emma, but she took a deep breath, called the client personally, explained the situation, apologized sincerely, and offered a clear plan to resolve it. The client accepted, impressed by her transparency and accountability. I watched from my office, heart swelling with pride. This was not just redemption, it was transformation. She had become the person she was always capable of being, someone grounded in integrity, capable of facing adversity without fear or deception. Even in her personal life, Emma began to navigate relationships with care. Friends who had once been judgmental now sought her advice. She became a confidante, a mentor, a person others could rely on. Her past mistakes, once a source of shame, had become lessons she shared with empathy and humility. One evening, as we sat together at the dining table, she reached for my hand. Mom, do you ever regret trusting me again? I looked at her, studying her eyes. At first, yes. I feared it would happen again. But seeing you now, no. I don't regret it. I hope people can change if they take responsibility and face the consequences of their actions. And you've done exactly that. Her eyes glistened. I want you to know, Mom, that I'll never take that trust for granted again. Every day, I think about what I did and how I can continue to make amends, not just with money, but with my actions, my words, and my choices. You've already done that, Emma, I said quietly. You've shown me the kind of person you've become. That's the true measure of redemption. Life continued, with small victories and occasional challenges, but Emma handled each one with grace and accountability. She saved diligently, invested wisely, and even began volunteering with local charities, helping others understand financial literacy and avoid mistakes like the one she had made. One particularly cold winter evening, she came home, bundled in a coat and scarf, and handed me a small package. Mom, I wanted to give you something, she said, her cheeks flushed from the cold. Inside was a framed photograph of us, taken years ago during a happier time, long before the theft. I looked at it, feeling a mixture of nostalgia and emotion. Emma, this is beautiful, I said, my voice catching. I wanted you to remember that, despite everything, we've come back to this, she said softly. We've rebuilt our bond, stronger than ever, and I never want to forget that. I hugged her tightly, realizing how far we had come. The girl who had once stolen from me was now the woman who ensured our family's security, supported those around her, and honored the lessons of responsibility and trust every day. Then came the ultimate test, a moment that would define the full circle of our journey. A close friend of mine faced financial ruin due to fraud, and the situation mirrored, in a smaller way, the one Emma had caused years earlier. My friend was panicked, distraught and desperate. I turned to Emma. This is your chance, I said quietly. You know the pain this causes. You know the fear, the panic. Can you help? She nodded firmly, determination in her eyes. Yes, Mom, I can do this. I've learned and I won't fail. For weeks, she worked tirelessly, analyzing accounts, communicating with institutions, devising strategies, and guiding my friend through recovery. Every decision was careful, every action accountable, every step thoughtful. By the time the crisis passed, my friend had not only recovered but learned from the experience, thanks to Emma's guidance. That evening, we sat together, exhausted but satisfied. Mom, I feel different, she said softly. Helping someone else through this, knowing what could have happened. I finally feel like I've truly made amends. I'm not just repaying money or trust, I'm creating something positive from my mistakes. I smiled, tears brimming. Emma, you've come full circle. You've transformed your mistakes into lessons, your guilt into growth, and your recklessness into responsibility. I am so proud of you. We sat quietly, holding hands, reflecting on the journey that had tested us so deeply. The pain, betrayal, and Trero's early days had shaped us both. But they had also forged a bond unbreakable by circumstance. Years later, when I looked back, I realized that the theft, the panic, the heartbreak, and the struggle had been the crucible that transformed both our lives. Emma had faced the consequences of her actions, learned from them, and built a life of integrity, empathy, and strength. I had learned that patience, boundaries, and guidance could nurture even the most wayward soul. The past no longer haunted us. Instead, it served as a foundation, a reminder of the lessons we had learned and the resilience we had forged. Emma had become a woman I could trust fully, someone who honored the lessons of the past, faced challenges bravely, and created a life rooted in accountability and love. One quiet evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Emma turned to me and said, Mom, thank you for believing in me, even when I didn't deserve it. I held her hand gently, feeling the weight of years of pain, growth, and love. And thank you, Emma, for proving that people can change, for showing me that redemption is possible, and for teaching me that trust, once rebuilt, can become stronger than ever. We watched the sunset together, a sense of peace settling over us. The shadows of the past had faded, leaving room for growth, understanding, and a bond stronger than any challenge life could throw our way. And in that moment, I knew without doubt that we had not only survived betrayal but had emerged stronger, wiser, and more united than ever. Our lives, once threatened by recklessness and fear, were now guided by trust, integrity, and love, a bond unbroken, unshakable, and eternal.